Hello, this is Curt Pringle. Thank you for tuning in to our Talking Issues series. And today's a fun discussion with someone who I've just relatively recently come to know. And I'll just say that February 6th is a really important day in our family. So that's the day of my wife's birthday, 1961. And more importantly, it is not more importantly than my wife, but more importantly, that's 1961, February 6th is 50 years to the date of the birth of Ronald Reagan and our 40th president. So when my wife and I were dating, Ronald Reagan was always a big part of our life because those were important times when he was president and such, and I was in politics. But also, she always had an affinity to Ronald Reagan as she served as an intern in an administrative office in Washington, D.C. in the White House. So that is the Pringle bond around Ronald Reagan is strong. So, of course, when the Reagan movie came out a couple years ago, we certainly went to see it. But then a few years after that, I was fortunate enough to come to know the producer of that Reagan movie, someone who lives here in Orange County, great guy by the name of Mark Joseph. So glad to have you here, Mark.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
No, it's awesome. And I want to understand a little bit more of movie production, the battles you had through that. But maybe we could start with your background. I know you've been in entertainment most of your adult life in different ways, from TV to music to certainly then movies. So how did all that start?
Yeah, well, I grew up overseas. So I was an expat in Japan, and I was born and raised there till I was 18 years old, pretty much. But it's been a couple of years. They used to call it furlough back in the day in the La Plata area nearby. So I always loved Southern California. So I came back here for college and always just was attracted to entertainment and media and my teenage years, and was into music and film and you name it. Anything to keep from having a real job. You know how it is.
No, sorry. I always had a real job. My dad made me
That's true.
work at the dry cleaners every day after school. So I
stand correct. But got into media quickly. I did a lot of TV work in my early years, and because I speak Japanese, I think I'm one of the few white guys that speaks Japanese like a native. So I got a lot of TV anchoring jobs. I was CNN's anchor from the U.S. that aired in Japan.
Oh, wow.
So trust me, Curt, reading a teleprompter in Japanese is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life.
Yes, it would be harder for me, though.
It would be harder for you. But and just I've kind of had my hand in every part of media, film production, as you said, TV production, writing books, producing records, a little bit of everything. And so when the Reagan movie opportunity came along, I kept waiting for somebody else to do it because I'm a little bit lazy. So though if somebody else can do something in life, then I don't have to do it, and then it'll get done. And I kept waiting and waiting, and nobody would do it, and they would do bad, half weird attempts at making them with various ones over the years, and so nobody did it. So I stepped up and did it. It took about 20 years, though.
So someone, had written a foundational screenplay, or did you
No, I just
oversee it from scratch?
I read Paul Kengor's book.
Okay,
And I just thought I have all the Reagan books written by different people over the years, and everybody seemed to miss a piece of the puzzle. And I thought that Kengor, who was a professor out in Pennsylvania, just really seemed to understand Reagan, understood the spiritual side of his life and the communist aspect. So I start the book with I'm driving in the Midwest. I just want to set the picture for your viewers and listeners. I'm there with my wife, and I think I had 4 children at the time, sweet young girls under the age of 6. We're all driving, going to a cousin's wedding. And I'm saying all this to set the stage that I was not actually speeding, but I pulled over for speeding.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful, wonderful speed trap there in Dixon. And I'm suddenly 20 miles over the speed limit, and going at the speed of traffic. And the nice officer pulls me over, and I could see his hands were shaking. I think he was a little nervous, maybe first day on the job. And he just said, "You're so far over the speed limit that you have to appear in court in person." And not to be a wise guy, California guy, but I mean, I can't really come back in a month.
Right.
Speeding ticket, I'll pay whatever. But
Yes.
so, well,
But I think that's a common police officer line at certain communities. And
we said, well, you can call, maybe you can get in earlier.
yes, okay.
So of course I called, and they got me in the next day, miraculously. So I come before the judge, and if you could picture my sweet little girl sitting in the front row, and there's a person that advises you, not quite an attorney, but they have somebody. He said, you need to, if you say not guilty, then you'll be on trial. They'll have a trial, and he could throw you in jail until the trial. I thought to myself, my poor little girls, their dad hauled away. So I thought I'm just going to have to say, Your Honor, guilty. But I said, Your Honor, before I plead, may I please show you the footage of what happens when I go the speed limit? Because I decided to have my wife tape me afterwards going 45, and I had people flipping me off and swearing at me. And so I had that all on footage.
Oh,
he just looked at me and said, I'm not going to watch your video. So innocent, guilty or not guilty. So it was my moment of truth. So I said guilty, paid my $500 fine.
Wow.
And was on my way. But I asked the clerk, how many people do you have today? And she said, you're the 19th. So I thought 19 times 500, that's a pretty good.
And you're only halfway through the day.
Right.
Good.
But the point of this was, all that to say, that was in Dixon, Illinois. And I knew when I realized I was in Ronald Reagan's hometown for the night, I thought maybe something is up here. Maybe I'm supposed to make a movie on this guy. And that's where it all started.
Well,
So I have to thank that officer for the $500 fine.
Yes. Did you get his name? I mean, did you really thank him or not?
I heard that he was had some trouble with the law later.
Oh,
according to rumors. I don't want to.
Right, or things you set him up for.
Right.
You breezed over your music production background, but I mean, I know we can touch base with this later in the discussion, but you did produce a lot of people who became or were big stars.
Yeah, I produced the soundtrack for The Passion of the Christ from Mel Gibson, the Inspired By soundtrack. So basically, I showed the movie to dozens of artists and see who wanted to write a song. And so I had some great, great artists writing songs for it. But all I can think about is the ones that didn't work out. I just couldn't manage Johnny Cash before he died. We were supposed to screen for him a month before. It got delayed, and he died in between all that. But we had Lauryn Hill and just a great, great group of artists on that record. And then I've had the chance to work with artists like ZZ Top before one of the members passed away. Produced a commercial, of all things, a commercial for Japanese TV with ZZ Top singing about the Honda Zet.
Yet in English or
just they're playing in the middle of the desert. It's on YouTube. So if your listeners are ZZ Top,
Honda Zet Japanese version.
That's
yes.
one of my.
Oh, that's awesome. So here you are thinking that someone needs to put together a strong Reagan movie. How do you even take that next step? I mean, is it straight looking for money, or is it looking for screenplay writer, or how does that all work?
Yeah, the first thing was to option the books. So I contacted Paul. He had a book called The Crusader that I thought was especially good. Crusader was the term that the Soviets sort of mockingly called Reagan. It wasn't a complimentary term.
Yes,
like the imperialist or something like that. So and then I used that, and then I brought along a screenwriter. So I hired one writer. Then the second writer was Howie Klossner, who wrote Space Cowboys for Clint Eastwood. So I thought it was in good hands. And, our business just takes a long time. The script was done over a period of time. And then now you have to kind of attract talent. So those conversations went on for years of finding the right actor.
So put that in context. The movie eventually was released in 2021, right?
2024.
Oh, 2024.
Theaters, yeah.
Okay.
So this is back in 2006. Wow. So 2005 and 6. But then the script was done. And then, the thing about our world is we're all working on multiple things at one time. So It's not like we sit around and wait 20 years for something to get done, but you're working on this. As the meantime, you keep the ball rolling. And so, there were opportunities along the way to sell the movie to different places, but I really wanted to shepherd it. I didn't really think it would survive in the wrong hands. So I would turn down different offers from streamers or studios or whatever. Because it came down to control issues, and I just wanted to make sure I was doing it justice. I don't think you want to watch a Reagan movie that went through a studio process. Just
probably.
trust me.
Yeah, probably not. So you're putting these pieces together, writing it, and hiring a director to be
Right.
able to oversee
As
it.
my director dies on me, so that's another one. But yes, lots of delays along the way.
Did he do it on purpose? Or
No,
oh, okay.
I had I'd reached out to
Sorry.
John Avildsen, who was the director of Rocky. I just thought I want my commercials to say from the director of Rocky comes Reagan.
Right.
And so, but the only problem was John was 81 years old. And so we went back and forth for a year or two. But in the meantime, he passed away shortly before we began shooting. So I went with another director. But yeah, John was a great resource. I mean, I spent time with him, learning from him and learning all of his trade secrets. And one thing he told us that really guided us, he said, don't forget that Rocky was not really about boxing. It just happened to be his occupation. And the same way this movie shouldn't be about politics. Politics is his occupation, but it's really about the man, all the things he overcomes, and the challenges along the way. So that always kind of guided us.
Yeah, no, that's good. So I guess we've talked earlier about a friend of mine who's invested in a number of movies. How do you have a product, you're ready to go, now you need to pay people? I mean, how does someone go about taking that step to something of this level of production?
Yeah, the easiest way is that, studios have financing operations in place. So the sane thing to do is to go to a studio and then they have their financial backers. It's not really the studios themselves often. It's often that they have partnerships with finance who then trust them. But yeah, that just wouldn't fly in this case. And so, so we had to go the difficult route of finding folks that support it and are interested. And not all Reagan fans. There were some that just saw the opportunity. And so, yeah, just getting a good team together that can be a part of that.
But you're out. I would assume you were the one making many of the contacts to sell them on the project and the importance of it. And
yeah.
So what was the production cost?
Well, officially 25, but I think COVID added a few million on there. So somewhere in that range. Yeah. And then in the middle of all this, we announced Dennis as Reagan, and then COVID strikes.
Right.
So now I really have a very difficult decision. And I remember my co-producer, John Sullivan, came to me, called me, said, I need a decision. Are we going forward or not? And do we wait till COVID is over, or do we just go?
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking, I've had friends die on me, 3 or 4 friends in the business. And I thought, I died after all this time making this. I feel so pathetic. So I said, let's just go. We don't know what's going to happen, but I think we just owe it to the investors and others. So I think we were the only major film shooting during COVID. And the governor of Oklahoma, we were shooting in Oklahoma. He promised me that he wouldn't shut us down, but he couldn't speak for the unions, and the unions were guided by the CDC. So we had to shut down twice, 10 days each time. If one person on the set got COVID, the entire set shuts down was the rule. So it was very, very difficult. So we shut down twice because of that. And then, boy, the actors' strike happened, which then pretty much shut us down from moving forward. Then even the war in Ukraine affected us because we had Russian and I believe we need some Ukrainian partners on special effects. Of course, we had to cease all that, start all over again and find new partners. So all those things just a delay after.
You have a product out there and just all the steps. And I think that's really important for people to see. I mean, here you were not affiliated with the studio, so it's an independent product.
Right.
You're on your own. You're putting all the pieces together and all the financing together and all the tools together, finding the stars. So with the relationships you had brought in Dennis Quaid, of course, to be Reagan, and John Voight, and I don't know all that many celebrity actors, but I certainly know those two.
Yeah, that was part of it, just finding the right team of actors. And I talked to probably 10 different actors about the role.
Yes.
And so, but Dennis was kind of always my first choice because he just has that natural, easygoing charisma.
Right.
And so, but his schedule was tied up for a while. So I had to talk to others in the meantime. But yeah, Dennis and I went out to dinner at Dick Reardon's restaurant, Gladstone's in Malibu. And we had a great dinner, and I told him why I think he would do a great job. And later he said that when he heard the offer, he said a tinge of fear went up his spine. But he's learned in life that when that happens, that means you're supposed to do it. So that was a great lesson for me too.
The fear factor, yes, exactly.
But so at the end of the dinner, I pulled out the Reagan cowboy hat replica I'd bought at the Reagan Library, and I gave to him as a present. He said, "I'll call you back." So a week or two later, he calls me back and he goes, I put that hat on, but it's just way too big. It doesn't fit. And so I braced myself for, a turn down, and he paused and he said, "But I think I can grow into it." So that was the beginning of our journey.
That's great. That's great. So there is, certainly in the movie and other places, of course, in Reagan's life, there's a connection tied back to Orange County with one of our members of Congress. And I know you highlighted Dana Rohrabacher in the movie and his part in that relationship with Reagan. So do you want to share a little bit about that? Because, of course, not only you probably met with Dana a number of times to fully understand those scenes.
Yeah, I met with probably 50 or 55 of the people that knew and worked with Reagan, and Dana was one of them. And the moment I met him, I'm like, this is a movie character. This is just perfect.
Right. We've known that in Orange County.
Exactly. He's just, there's so many, they're nice Republican people. And then to have this guy in the midst of that, it was just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So the scene, and he told me about the scene where he camped out in Reagan's backyard.
Right.
Who would do this? Normal people don't act like this. So it was perfect.
So you have described that perfectly.
That's right. We needed somebody like that for a movie. And so he plays kind of well off of the Mike Deaver character in the movie. Deaver's kind of horrified that this guy's in the Oval Office and that he's dressed like he's dressed, flip-flops. And so that was kind of the comic relief we needed. But Dana was a great source of information on Reagan, and they had a kind of a special relationship. Almost like a father-son relationship. That was great. But, George Schultz and, Peter Hannaford and so many of the other guys that I met with, Judge Clark, spent time with them and got their stories. And
that's good. So, that is also something. So you're having a screenwriter. I think you went through two of them. So the first one didn't quite work the way you wanted the sound to be of the movie, and then you have your second one. But what they write is from certain knowledge. I mean, you're vetting all of this along the way with people who had an actual relationship or knowledge of certain events, so you could frame it properly, right?
So I think even people that didn't like the movie, I don't think anybody calls it inaccurate. You just don't like the emphasis on certain things, right? Yeah, I think we nailed everything. I would say, this is not a documentary, so you do have some leeway. So for I think the last horse ride, that never happened once the Secret Service agent told me we shouldn't ride anymore. But again, this is a movie. So, but all the other stuff, we don't know exactly what Ron and Nancy said to each other in the kitchen.
Sure.
But we have an idea. But everything else was, pretty much by the book and the way it happened. And Reagan had such an interesting life that you don't have to really embellish it. It's just, it's a huge, 4 different lives.
Right. Exactly. It is interesting to, candidly, it feels, looking at the movie, it is much more a story of a man, not a story of politics. So there was not all that much emphasis on all the political positions other than kind of the relationship with Russia and, those types of, or Soviet Union or whatever the case may be at the time. And, so that was interesting. I skipped through Dana Rohrabacher a bit, but he was one, you said you vetted different elements of the script with different people who had come to know Ronald Reagan or knew him or knew of those circumstances. Like, what other type of people other than his cabinet members you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Mike Reagan had some great stories. I mean, I would run into people, everybody would want to share their story, out dinner one night. And I talked about this in the book. There was a woman sitting next to me, and they introduced me to her as, she's like a fortune teller. So, okay, that's interesting. But I also knew Reagan's daughter when I was, we went to their house. And so I tell me the stories. And so she, just very random stories like that. And of course, as I said, all the all-stars. I did try to meet with Gorbachev, but I did not get a chance to meet Gorbachev. That would have been interesting.
Yeah, really.
But I would say most of the people, if they hadn't passed away, Dick Allen, gave us some great stories. Was Reagan's national security advisor.
Yeah. So now let me see. I was at a friend's funeral on a few years ago, and the funeral director, it was not really a funeral home, but more of a event center. And she made sure she told me that Mike Reagan was married there. So I think she said she meant the governor or the president before he was president on Ball Road in Anaheim. So just keep that in mind.
That's where he was married.
Yeah. So I could assume as it gets out that you are working on this movie, that different people all come up to you with different stories and, different interactions of the time.
Yeah. People were eager to share their stories.
Yes.
All their interactions with him. And so, hey, piecing all that together, was part of the process as well. So my writer, and I should say, I talked about this in the book, but originally we were just going to tell the story straight, beginning at the assassination attempt. And just when I'd hired my second writer, it must have been on my mind because I dreamed the opening of the movie. And I remember thinking to myself, if I don't wake myself up, I won't remember this. So I woke myself up. I wrote everything that I had just seen down. And with great trepidation, I sent it to my newly hired writer. And, I was thinking he's going to say, get out of my...
Right. I woke up with this idea. Yeah.
Great. A producer didn't tell me how to write this movie. So I said, what do you think? And he goes, oh, that's great. I'll run with that. So that was the whole KGB agent. That just came from too much pizza the night before, too much coffee or something. But I dreamed the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Okay.
So basically what you see is the dream.
Well, some people may not have seen it, so you could entice them to see it.
Well, I remember in my dream seeing a young Russian leader coming up on the steps and knocking on the door, ringing the doorbell, and meeting a retired Soviet KGB agent. And then he sat down.
And that was... One of those is John
Voight plays the holder. Yeah. And says, what do you want? What do you want from me? He knows who he is. He's an up and coming leader. He said, I want to know how we lost our country. And then the KGB agent says, well, fine, sit down, pour some vodka, and then that'll begin the story.
Tell the story.
Yeah. So that's how we told the story. So I wish I could take, if I could take credit for it, I would.
Yes.
But I really can't. I take credit for waking myself up, and that's about it.
So what other things were you awakened to learning about Ronald Reagan? What are some of those unique stories that you didn't know before you stepped into this role?
Yeah, I can't say there were a lot of surprises because I knew the Reagan story well and had read a lot of different books, but I think just learning, Rohrbacher in particular would say, Reagan was the same in private as he was in public. It wasn't like he would leave a meeting and go, glad those guys are out of our hair. He just was the same person. He was very authentic, and that was good. I did ask one of his aides, Peter Hannaford, who was one of his PR type guys. It was a little frustrating because I said, look, a movie about Mr. Perfect, this isn't that interesting. You've got to give me some humanity here. He said, I said, what would make him angry, for instance? You have a temper. I said, yeah, a little bit of a temper. So well, give me an example. He says, well, one day we overscheduled him. And he sat down at a conference table. He read the schedule, said he threw his sunglasses or glasses across the table. And he said, fellas, I can't do all this in one day. I'm like, good. That's good. That shows me he's human. But it would pass very quickly, he would say. It was just a little flash, then it would pass. I spent time with Justice Kennedy and Justice Scalia in the Supreme Court, got their stories. Justice Kennedy gave me a great story, but I didn't put in the movie. But he said Reagan called him for the seat, and he said, Mr. President, Mary and I don't know anybody in Washington, D.C. really would be good for us to. And Reagan paused and he said, well, you know me. Yes, sir, Mr. President. Okay, we'll come. And that's how he got him to be on the Supreme Court. Wow. So just little stories like that. Kennedy was Reagan's lawyer in Sacramento.
Okay.
So he told me some great stories.
I didn't know that.
Well, and so all those things, Scalia didn't know him very well because he just was nominated by him.
Right.
But yeah, all those stories work their way in.
No, and it's something to start and to write something like that about someone who we all have understanding of or perspective of, right? and to be able to write it such that, some of the Reagan fans think it's, properly respectful and reflecting the truth. And then a broader audience, a newer audience may be able to pull in and understand Ronald Reagan a little bit better. So,
yeah, despite the critics, we really do show his, challenges and failures. And it's almost like they were looking for a different kind of movie that would just be 24 just entirely bashing him. But, his teenage girlfriend runs away with, they were engaged basically, and she finds an American service member in Europe and runs off with him, marries him, and sends him a Dear John letter. His first wife, divorces him. I have him down and out in Vegas throwing a beer bottle against the wall. And I sits with his mother on the park bench saying, I thought I was going to be somebody great. You told me I was going to be somebody great, and it's not happening for me. So I don't know. That's pretty low.
yeah,
So I
no,
don't know what
exactly.
you're talking about.
Exactly. So in putting this together, you were able to kind of pull back to some of your early music roots, and people may not realize some of the rock and rollers of that era also are reflective in your movie.
Yeah. I had a list on my wall of 60 artists that I want. I was kind of thinking of the greatest artists of the last 40 years, from the Reagan era forward. And so if you had asked me, which ones do you think you won't get, I would have said Bob Dylan and Kiss. I got Bob Dylan and Gene Simmons for the soundtrack. So I got the Commodores. Just kind of the all-star. But it was really kind of who would respond.
Right.
So,
and some playing some of their own music, others singing things that may not be known for.
Yeah, primarily new songs. Yeah.
Okay.
So Bob gave us a song called Gene Simmons gave us Stormy Weather. And I was kind of hoping for a Kiss song for the Inspired By soundtrack. But Gene just said, I want to make a song that sort of unites all the races and ages and clans and groups and whatever. So we came up with Stormy Weather. And then Bob turned in Don't Fence Me In. It's an old song from the 40s as well.
Right.
And then Clint Black did Country Roads at the end. And then there were just a lot of other great artists that were on the separate soundtrack. Commodores and Tanya Tucker and Travis Tritt and all these great artists.
That was fun. Great.
The music.
And a lot of that reflects his country style, Reagan's
Americana,
right? And so you referenced it a little earlier, his final ride at his ranch,
right?
But you filmed a lot of the project at the ranch and in the house there, right?
Mostly in Oklahoma.
Okay,
and we shot at the Reagan Ranch and then on Air Force One at the Reagan Library, and Marine One. So it is a little eerie this is all the places where everything would have taken place, like the kitchen where Dennis and Penelope are talking about running for president. That literally would be, and it's exactly the way it was with the harvest gold and the green and all the way the kitchens were in the 70s.
Exactly. So the final ride isn't on his ranch?
Yeah, it's there too. Yeah, it's all.
Oh, at his ranch.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't want it to be filmed in Oklahoma.
No.
It would really disappointed me. Yes. Yeah. No, that's so what, the ranch is still available for people to go see and visit through, let me see.
Young Americans
for Freedom or Young American Foundation. So what did you feel being on there? Some people told me you really feel his presence and, you can, see what he saw in that, comforting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I learned that, we buy houses that reflect us in some way. And with Reagan, it's so isolated that he just wanted to get away from everybody. He didn't dislike people, but he needed his time alone. Right. So there's nobody for miles around. The Queen, he brought the Queen there and she was just horrified. I think her hair got messed up because it was raining and the weather was bad. And, but it's very isolated. And so I think that's a reflection of his personality. I brought Dennis up there and he really felt like that was the moment that it was solidified that he decided to do it. He felt like Reagan's presence there. So yeah, I'm so glad they preserved it because it could have been
right. Exactly.
And turned into apartment buildings or something.
Or just isolated from public view.
Yeah, that's the way they left it.
Yeah. It's awesome.
His clothes are still hanging in the closet and it's like they just left for the day or something.
Right. And, I really do think, we got to know each other when you were at a presentation of your book, and you wrote this book of Making Reagan. And I think it's very cool that you take many of these stories and you put them in a book to share with people, to be able to see that whole challenging craft of putting together the movie, but also, a lot of the stories that you're sharing now, or even more, are reflected there. So that's,
well, I tell people, if you have a young person in your life who wants to get into film,
yeah,
give them this book and you can talk them out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like my dad, when I wanted to be a lawyer, he made sure I went and had lunch with his lawyer, and his lawyer was a nasty old man. So the whole argument was to try to make sure I was never going to be a lawyer. So you could do that, but I actually think it's the other way around. I think if people read your book, the struggles are what makes us, right? And certainly you were able to present that through some of the struggles of working things through in the production of the book and the movement of Making Reagan. So I think that's great. So what are the, I know you were a nominee for the Dove Awards, 6 Dove Awards.
It's we're living in such an interesting culture now that the same movie was nominated for 5 Razzie Awards for Worst Movie of the Year.
Okay.
The Internet...
See, I wasn't going to bring that up, and here you do. That's very bold.
The Internet Film Critics Association Worst Movie of the Year. And then we win, the Will Rogers Award for the Greatest Movie of the Year. The Dove Awards were a nominee. There's another International Society of something. So it's like we're in a world now where the same piece of work is the worst and the greatest, depending on your perspective. So it's an interesting time we live in.
No, exactly. So what is the next project?
Well, I have a number of stories that I want to do. There's a couple of my rock star friends that have great stories of redemption and sex, God, and rock and roll. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll redemption. So that's a couple of the ideas. Kicking back and forth with them, and some other stories. So we'll see what catches fire next.
Well, and we know each other, are men of faith, so I know that you have others to rely upon to give you guidance in this regard. So,
well, I have 6 children, so it's hard to develop a big head when you have 6 children who will remind you that you're not all that. And we have fun, though. We travel. I usually take one with me on all my film travels. And on the set, of course, I got a lot of free work out of them. So they have little cameos here and there. I had to pay them, though. My poor son, Jordan, he had a chance to have a speaking scene, he was 5 years old at the time. 5 years old. And so the director said, okay, I need you to say this. And Jordan said, no. It was midnight. He was tired. And so I always razz him because that no cost him $900 because
is that right?
He only got
Once you get a word
instead of 1,000. So he's learned to obey directors the next time.
That's wonderful.
But we have a lot of fun, and I usually take one with me, and we have fun on the road. And I had a lot of producer friends when I was just getting started who said I really regret that I missed my kids' childhoods, and so I thought, well, how can I figure out a way around? So my compromise was to take one with me. And so a lot of my memories with them one-on-one were on the road, traveling to movie sets or just other events. And it also kept us connected because then their sisters would call them and say, hey, what's happening? What are you guys doing? And it kept us all kind of connected. And so a lot of my memories of them are times we spent, on the road together.
Yeah, how wonderful. That's great. Well, thank you for the time with me today and get to know you, but also get some of the backstory on the Reagan movie and a movie that we love. And I love your book. So thank you very much to spend time and share with us all.
Well, thanks. And so February 6th is a big day in your family.
It is.
You have double duty on that day.
Yeah, I'll go back and show you my wife's office where she's got all kinds of her Reagan paraphernalia back there. So thanks for coming.